My life changed when I met you
Yeah.
and it changed for the better. But I also brought me with me to the relationship. And I was still broken, very broken.
Welcome to Startup Spouses, where we help entrepreneurial couples take their relationship from mediocre to mind-blowing. I'm Marie.
Hey, and I'm Adam.
And this is where the tables have turned.
Yeah.
And I get to interview Mr. Adam Hill over here.
That's right. Yeah, I get to kind of like just sit back. I don't have to prepare any questions. I just have to kind of answer and I don't know, is this going to be like a hot seat situation? Should I be more prepared?
No, you don't, because you told me not to.
Okay.
That you told me not to tell you the questions beforehand.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
so you get to listen to me tell you the questions.
I want it to be a surprise.
I know you do.
Yeah. So like
Okay.
if I like stumble on a question, I have to take an article of clothing off. Is that the agreement?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's not going to happen
Okay.
on YouTube. Sorry. Sign up for Patreon though, and maybe we can make an arrangement there or something.
Patreon
I don't know.
already?
Well,
Okay.
maybe. Yeah.
We're coming up in this world.
That's right. We're coming on up. All right.
Okay, so let's dig into your childhood.
Sure.
Let's talk about how love was shaped in your household,
How love was shaped in my household.
or
right?
how your idea of love was formed.
So I think the way that love showed up for me early on in life was, I was raised by my two parents. They loved each other very much. They showed us what love looks like just by kind of being, by being present with one another, showing affection to one another. And in particular for me, how I received and felt love was my mother, was very good at just, she gave of herself a lot to us. She made me in particular feel loved. I come from a household that was I think of it like a Brady Bunch household in some ways, because my parents were previously married to other people before they met each other, and they had separate families when they were in their previous marriages. So all of my siblings are much older than me, and from the previous marriages. So they got together, and then I came along like Alice or Tiger, depending on how you want to look at that. So I kind of felt I had kind of both sides of it. I grew up in a household where I had siblings, but because they were also so much older, I also felt a little like an only child, because they were doing their own thing and deeply within the Gen X circles, and I was kind of on the fringe of Gen X, and so I received a lot of love from my parents, and I think that the way that they showed love was really, in terms of wanting to make sure we felt safe, secure, and all that kind of stuff, and that was almost over time to a fault, because it didn't take a lot of risks growing up, and was led to feel like risks might be kind of something to stay away from, because you just want to be safe and just be happy in that safety. But all that to be said, that I think I grew up kind of in a loving household, but also over time, over the course of decades, that idea of love, it's just really hard to practice love. And I think it's yeah, but that's kind of the first thoughts.
Yeah, so
first ideas.
Love in your world was mainly about safety.
I think it was starting, early on.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it evolved.
It evolved into.
Yeah. I mean, over time it evolved. And that was through a lot of like living and challenge.
Yeah.
I'm talking like when I was 4 or 5 years old,
Yeah.
I was, feeling like afraid. I was very fearful growing up.
Why do you think that is?
I don't really know. I mean, I think that I just craved a lot of comfort, and I craved a lot of safety, and I craved that. And so when I faced up against other kids who might be bullying me or threatening to fight or or, even playing like pee-wee football. Like I was afraid of being hit, and I kind of felt maybe like a mama's boy because I would like seek the comfort of home a lot, to the point where even I got homesick a lot if I had ever had to leave, like up until I was maybe in junior high or high school. Like I just got homesick all the time. And so I think I really tried to latch on to the comfort. But over time, once I went to college and, started discovering alcohol, I think alcohol was like, I talk about my life in in a series of transformations that I made.
Yeah.
Transformations can be good or bad. And I think one of the first transformations I had, I think I transformed in high school because I started realizing I had certain talents, like talents for music, talents for things like that. But when I got to college, I transformed in a not so healthy way, which is I found out that alcohol could make me more social. And with that socialness, I started taking more risks.
Yes.
And I started to change. And change is a good thing, but when I change, like with the supplementing with a toxic thing like alcohol, it's not as great. So I began to, like, over time, began to be a very isolating drinker, and my idea of love became much different, I think, at that time.
So what you're saying is, it's very interesting of how your perspective of it too is like there's a lot of safety, security, wanting to be home. Do you believe that part of that is from anxiety and not necessarily love? Because when the perspective of love is vulnerable,
Right.
It's caring.
Yeah. Right.
And a lot of the words that you used, if you don't mind me saying, it seems like a lot has to stem from anxiety.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of anxiety, a lot of shame growing up. I think there was just a lot of, and I don't know if those two I think those two lived in the same world, anxiety and shame.
Yeah.
Because especially as I got into drinking,
Yeah.
I was trying to hide my alcoholism and the disease from a lot of people, from you, from
You weren't
everybody.
very good at hiding it.
Of course I wasn't. I mean, you suck at hiding those kinds of things. But I think you're right to the point that love is, in some essence, vulnerability, being vulnerable enough to show love. I didn't have a lot of love for myself because I felt so much shame. And so my willingness to be vulnerable wasn't that high. And so the result was a ton of anxiety that formed in the form of panic attacks and then fed into my disease of alcoholism, which, of course, I drank to not feel the shame. And I felt shame because I drank and blah, 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 blah. And it's just like this overwhelming spiral. And so love didn't necessarily seem like it had much of a place in that whole world.
Yeah, you kind of I feel like shame and anxiety live in the darkness.
Yeah, of course.
And they are in that space where if you were ever to name them,
Yeah.
It makes it a lot easier for you to walk through life, to have to feel love.
Right.
Because they say that shame lives in the darkness. So it's kind of like, well, where is the love? Where did you feel did you feel anything at a teenage level of what you wanted love to look like?
Yeah. It's like that Hanson song, Where's the Love? Yeah.
I don't remember that song.
Where's the love?
No.
It's not enough.
Well, so what was your perspective on, let's just say, romantic love during your teenage years? What did that look like for you?
Yeah. So I don't really know how I shaped this idea of, I just know that really early on, I was terrified. I mean, as with anything else, like fear kind of dominated my life for the young part of my life. And so I was terrified of the idea of ever talking to girls. And that stems back to when I was 8 or 9 years old. and I had, or when I had my first crushes in elementary school, like I would be terrified of going up to that. And I think for some reason, that combined with the idea that like I just really, really attached to the idea of I was, I think even then I craved really meaningful relationships, like meaningful connections. I just didn't know it at the time. And because I was so afraid, I like latched onto this idea of romance, of the idea of romanticism. Like, I need to find that ideal someone, that someone that will just like, make me melt and I can make them melt. And like, we could just go off into the sunset and be high school sweethearts forever and then marry each other and I'll be noble and I'll open the door and I'll buy her flowers, all this kind of stuff. And all of that, like romance. And that's what I saw, like, as an example from my parents was like, they showed this love to each other. We didn't see any of the negative or, anything like that. But like, it was just this idea that romance. So I spent most of my young life longing for the girlfriend or the crushes and never really going after it, never really taking that risk. And when I did, it would be rejection and it would be like, oh no, it's terrible. But I would also see the crushes that I had, you know, have relationships with other guys who had more confidence than me, who are willing to go and do the thing. And so I think in that, it just kind of shaped this idea of romance and pain around it, because like and heartbreak, because I would never like really get the girl, quote, so to speak. But that all changed when I discovered alcohol. I mean,
how did alcohol shape your idea of relationships and love?
yeah, I think that's a lot of where shame might have come in too, because what happened when I started to drink alcohol was I started to be more social. And of course, within the world of alcohol, inhibitions go down. So I was able to make my moves more on girls that weren't really great moves. It was like, hey, want to make out? And, occasionally, like, because we were both drunk, it would turn out to a makeout session. That became like my perception of that. But the shame came in because it's like, it felt a little empty, because the idea of the romance wasn't there, that I thought was so important, was that the romance piece. And I think that if I can get on my soapbox, in the 90s and early 2000s, even now, I mean, when we watch movies with
rom-com.
Yeah, rom-com movies and things like that. Like, we were watching Ted Lasso and they were watching the movie You've Got Mail, which was like, this romance of like Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks are getting together like Sleepless in Seattle. And it's just like this romantic thing we all think is going to be happily ever after the guy gets the girl.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh yeah, forget about the fact that relationships beyond that point take work. But that's kind of what I just, basically kind of got into the hookup culture and got reinforced through the idea of drinking that, oh, this can help me actually like be social and take risks. And so I went the exact opposite direction when I started drinking alcohol. That's kind of how that shaped my life in that world.
So, somewhere in between that, like when you started college, that's when we met too. Yeah. So how did, because I was also a mess.
Yeah.
I can say that. I'm so put together now. Anyways,
yeah.
No.
Yeah, we're so put together that we know what cameras to look at, even. So,
yeah, I know.
Right?
Yeah. All right. Anyways, so when I stepped in the picture, and because I feel very comfortable talking to you about this, like,
right.
How did that shift your perspective?
Oh yeah, no, it went perfectly.
It
was like this Sleepless in Seattle moment where we got together and everything went fine, and I was cured of all of my ills, and then we made
you were
millions
so
of dollars.
Secure, and you had the confidence of $1 million. I don't know
That's right.
The confidence of $1 million.
I don't know how much confidence does $1 million have? A lot.
Well, if you have $1 million, maybe you are confident. I have no
Yeah,
clue.
maybe. Yep.
Maybe not. Okay. Anyways, so how did that how did your thoughts, your feelings, your perspective of what relationship should be, or what did it match what you thought it should be, or did it change into something that you thought was more realistic, or was the risk taking? I'm asking so many questions at once, aren't
Yeah.
I? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll stop there and
That's
just
all right.
have you answer.
Yeah, I'll say the first thing that kind of comes to my mind with that. I think that like this idea that you know, quote unquote, you meet the one, and all of a sudden your life changes forever. I mean, yes, I believe that. Yeah, my life changed when I met you.
Yeah.
And it changed for the better. But I also brought me with me to the relationship. And I was still broken, very broken. You know, I was broken for many years after that because of alcoholism, of fear, all that kind of stuff. So I brought all of that fear and all of that, self-loathing kind of stuff to our relationship. And a lot of that turned into codependency with us because it was like you became that constant for me, that person that was there, that could be with me, that accepted me, that loved me. Mm-hmm. And I was messy, but I could come back to that in some ways. And I think we had this level of codependency that, I mean, the good news is it kept us together for as long as we could to break through and actually become what we are today.
Yeah.
The bad news is I think that it was also not the healthiest of dynamics for either of us for many years. While there was no abuse or anything like that. I was for the most part, when I was drinking, I was more of just a clumsy idiot drunk, not a crazy or violent drunk or anything like that.
Yeah.
And nor were you. I think it was just that it was, I think but I think we navigated a period of that first season of our lives together was, it was exciting. It was fun. It was also rooted in a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, panic. And, you were through some of the most difficult parts of my life. And I think it was also rooted in some codependence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that looking back now, came from, and it might be my perspective, mm-hmm. and you might not resonate with you. But we were two people who didn't really have the love in our lives necessarily, mm-hmm. and then trying to figure it out along the way with each other.
Yeah.
Like it was not shown to us. It was not displayed to us. It was wrapped up in anxiety and fear and scarcity mindset.
Right.
As children, that we didn't really get to feel love, mm-hmm. necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that might be just me saying that, and that's okay. But that shaped how and I got emotional right there, mm-hmm. is because of the fact that how we are together, and we met and we're still together now.
Right.
Even though that we stumbled through this.
Oh yeah.
All of it. So let's just try to fast forward, and then after you graduated mm-hmm. college, what happened next for you? What was?
So when I was in college, I got into college with music.
Yeah.
I was a music major. I played cello all throughout my young life. It was this one thing that playing cello was the first area of my life where I realized, wow, I can be world class at something.
Yeah. And
really great. And my first year in college, I, had a bad teacher, a bad bad coach for that matter, just the wrong mentor. And I applied that to all of my music career. I just decided to quit that music. And then I kind of floundered for a while because I thought I wanted to be a marine biologist, but I had to start off with so many chemistry classes and biology classes that I couldn't wrap my hand around it. It just wasn't my core competency. And so for the first time, I was just really struggling academically, and not to mention drinking heavily and having all this anxiety and panic and having to repeat courses and almost failing out of college. And it was just like this nightmare. And so I finally just kind of like had to ask myself, like sophomore, junior year in college, what's the fastest way I can graduate? And it was just like, okay, I figured out like and then through some friends that I had at the time that aren't really friends anymore, they were more enablers. They were like, well, all you need to do is just get a general degree and then go out and get a job and just like, do that. And so it was like, basically I was getting this advice to just settle and to not follow a dream anymore. And so I really just in college just kind of stopped dreaming. And so I decided to go for a psychology degree, which wasn't bad. I mean, I use psychology in my life today through organizational like psychology and dealing with other human behaviors. And it's very much a part of my life. I've learned to actually find the place where it is meaningful to me now. But at the time it was just like, okay, I'm going to go with psychology and do that and get through it. Because I found that was probably the fastest path for me to graduate at the time, given the credits I had. And so that's what I did. I, was just kind of, my family has a family business that has been in our family for 4 generations. My great grandfather started in 1923, and my dad was running it at the time. And so when I got out of college, I looked at like it was 2002. We were in the midst of a recession, not a lot of like jobs going out to everybody. And so I decided to just, there's this opportunity that seemed pretty safe. Again, there's that word, and secure. And I went and I did that. And pretty quickly, I went to work for the R&D department in our company, got paid an extremely low wage to do that right out of college. Because that's kind of a thing in family business that people don't realize, especially in multi-generational family businesses, is that family members, on the most part, this isn't always. I mean, what we hear what we hear about family businesses in pop culture and on television shows about it is that when you watch Arrested Development or Succession, you see a bunch of entitled kids running around, running amok, just making a shit ton of money. Like, and just, being given the keys to the castle while also being suppressed. That's not true of 80 or 90% of family businesses. In the vast majority of family businesses, family members go underpaid for their entire career because they have to prove themselves. Meanwhile, also getting the silver spoon treatment from their coworkers, saying that kind of thing. And I'm not saying this to say poor me or anything like that. But I am saying that to hopefully be relatable to other people who might be going through the same situation, because growing up in a family business, especially when we talk about the idea of legacy and building a legacy, this needs to be understood by people who are building businesses, especially if they're building the businesses for the benefit of their family. A lot of times you are creating a generational burden. Mm-hmm. And that is true for many families. And a lot of times you're underpaying your kids because you think that they that they need to pay their dues or some kind of bullshit like that. And so I came into the organization, for whatever, and I realized very quickly that it just wasn't fulfilling. But I also came in on the promises and assumptions that, hey, you'll grow into something someday.
So
You might lead something someday. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
anyways, no, that it's interesting how you talk about that. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, you're talking about your relationship with your family in the family business. was it different than when you were at home? Did your relationship from work and shifted into like home, did those relationships look differently? Were they the same? How were you still treated like differently at home? Were you welcomed with open arms? How did your relationships?
I think the relationships didn't really change that much as far as the family relationships.
Yeah.
The way that we were in there, and I think frustratingly so for me, was we didn't talk about business in like a Thanksgiving dinner or anything like that. It was very much that. And what I didn't realize till much later was that that was an avoidant issue, not a deliberate issue. It may have been partially deliberate, like to the extent that we don't want to talk about it, but it was also kind of maintaining some level of artificial harmony. Like, let's not talk about the issues over family dinners. Let's not talk about it at this, but there was no other real opportunity to talk about like some of those things. So I think for the most part, the family relationships were still good. But I also think that there was some frustration around the idea of just not having a place to talk about like, hey, this is kind of what I want, or this is what I think. How do we, get a seat at the table? Because a lot also in family businesses, one of the mistakes a lot of families make is they tend to see a family member in need of a job and they just want to give that person a job and just invent a job for them.
Yeah.
But that does not create fulfillment at all. In fact, that is more damaging than not bringing that family member in. We learn in EOS talk, entrepreneurial operating system talk now, that creating the structure first in the organization is a vital first step to having that soundness of the business. And then you put the right people in the right seats. Because if you have the wrong people in the wrong seats, or you just invent seats for people, there's no filling career outlet there. There's nothing fulfilling. So I feel like for the first, number of years of working in the organization, it was more of hey, we need to find a spot for there's not really there might be a need to be filled here, but it's more like this. And so it was having to build something from scratch that not a lot of people wanted, and trying to develop credibility in that kind of environment was hard. But that said, and didn't have much of a place to talk about that in the family. And so we just kind of kept the family dynamics the family.
So it's very much, would you say, separated?
Yeah.
Separate, like, or just, and during this time, within like, not too long after you started working within the company, we got married and had kids. And like, how did that shape your idea of relationships and love?
Oh, I mean, like, as far as our relationship, I mean, I think that there was a number of different types of relationships. But I think from the standpoint of how Hill Brothers shaped my idea of relationships, it was an evolving situation. I think as far as how our relationship developed over that time, but we've said on here that I think we're on our fourth marriage together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did we say this already?
I think we've talked about that, because this idea that, like, as you're evolving, as you're shedding skin and you're transforming, and I talked about early on, my life has been a series of transformations. And I think that's true in relationships as well. In marriage, it's a series of transformations, and you either grow together or you grow apart, as one of my friends, Barb Betts, has said on a previous show that I did, which I really attached to, because it's like, yeah, it's true. You either do grow together or you grow apart. Because if you're going to transform, there's going to be you might end up in different places, but if you transform and you kind of grow together, you grow together. We've grown together over the series of 4 different relationships or more. And so that idea of getting married, of going into career mode, became our second relationship, because you went to work as a restaurant manager and I went to work at Hill Brothers. We got married and tried to kind of fall into a life of quote unquote normalcy, where we had the career, the marriage, trying to like, pay the bills, all this kind of stuff, got the dog, had the family. It's like we were so committed to conforming, but that in and of itself was kind of miserable.
You say, like, you're talking about conforming,
Yeah.
and how now looking back, it's so opposing to who we are today,
Right.
because we kept trying to stuff ourselves into boxes,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to be what we thought
Right.
we were supposed to be, not who we deep down. So we kept ignoring what we wanted
Right.
inside. I feel like that's been. I mean, you were in music, and then
It's definitely a thing. Yeah.
you're in music, and you go into college, and instead of having a conflict with your professor, you just left the whole thing. You
Right.
left it all behind,
Right.
and then you went the easy and fastest route, trying to stuff yourself more into a box, more into a box, more into a box.
Mm-hmm.
How did that make you feel during that time when we were in a family,
Yeah.
you're working in the business, and what what was your mindset at that time?
Well, I felt trapped.
Yeah.
I mean, because I kept doing more things with regard to what I felt would make me conform. And let's break down the idea of what conform means. Conforming in this context, I believe, means that I'm doing things that I believe people want from me. People want me to come to work, and they want me to show up as one of the future leaders of the organization. People, want me to show up in a specific way. They want me, because I'm in a family business that says 4 generations old, to be like all of the other family in that business. They want me to be something different. Meanwhile, I'm struggling with alcoholism, which makes me feel a tremendous amount of shame. And it's challenging these ideas of what everybody else expects of me, or what I believe everybody else expects of me, and what I believe everybody else wants from me, because now there's a disconnect between who I really am, which is an alcoholic who's really struggling, who's got a ton of anxiety and fear, and is not feeling comfortable in his own skin, who's not doing what he wants with his life, and wrestling with how I show up in the world, in those communities, which is a fake version of myself that's trying to come off as some kind of person that's a part of this community. And it was exhausting. It felt like I was trapped. And the more that I got more of the things that I thought that that the world thought was successful, the more unhappy that I got. And I think that wasn't to say that I wasn't happy in the marriage, or wasn't happy with kids, because I love my family, but that very fact was that, like, I felt like that contributed to being trapped, was I felt like I had to continue in that world in order to support that thing, because I had such a low view of myself. It's like, well, that's the only thing that I have. There's nothing else that I could do. There's nowhere else I could go. There's nothing else. And I was also trying to support a drinking habit.
Definitely so. Would you call yourself a people pleaser?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, not so much anymore.
Well, no, I'm saying during this time.
During that
what
time,
what
absolutely.
what was your earliest memory of being a people pleaser?
Um,
And how did you, does that show up with how you got love? Is that why?
yeah. I mean, friends, family. If there's something that I didn't give to somebody else that they were expecting, I would get reprimanded for it. And, or, and so I did feel like I had to show up as a different version of myself for other people. And, that was as early as elementary school. Like, it was just like with friends and things like that, and different family members. And I think that that's kind of where, that stems from.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, being a people pleaser, being an alcoholic,
Yeah.
when did that all become too much for you?
Well, I mean, I think it became too much for me before I did anything about it. Because I mean, the challenge, the difficulty with alcohol or any addiction is that by its very nature, that addiction becomes the crutch or the solution by which you solve that thing that you're trying to solve. And so alcoholism became that crutch or that solution for me. And so I kept using that solution throughout it being too much, right? But then I got in a DUI accident, which is something I never thought that I would do. You know, speaking of going against so much against what now I'm not only going against what society expects of me, which is of course that, but like now I'm challenging my own value system, who I believe that I need to be. And now I'm a danger to others, not just myself. Now I'm seeing how, it's affecting you and the family and all this kind of stuff. And I realize that I'm going to either be dead or in jail. And I won't have a family.
Yeah.
And so I went into the rooms of AA and found my very, very, very first community. And it was a community, and it was my very, very first community of unconditional love. Meaning there was no conditions on that love. Mm. And I started to really learn, going back to one of your first questions, is what is love? Learning what unconditional love is. It's ugly. It's not always nice. It's kind. And that there's a difference between kind and nice. And kind is definitely not always nice. And that the rigorous, honest, open truth can be kind. And it can also break somebody down in the most meaningful way. And so I spent the next year of my life being broken down in the most meaningful way. Yeah. Breaking down my ideas in the most meaningful way. Because I thought that during that time that I was getting or before I got sober, I thought, well, I have to be there for my family. Family first. Family always first. That's always what I've learned. And then I was getting this new message in sobriety of, no, your sobriety comes first. You need to be selfish about your sobriety and stop being so self-absorbed, but be selfish about your sobriety. And that needs to come first, because without it, nothing else lasts. And that was a big shift in how I had to show up. So my sobriety came first. And that changed everything for me. That changed my perspective of what love was.
So where did you take it from there? Did you... getting sober is one of the most difficult things that one person can do in their life.
Yeah.
Yes. How did that shift your perspective of what you could be in this world? I mean, by focusing on yourself, how did that shift your relationships?
It definitely made them better. During that time, I became familiar with and aligned with a word that was more powerful to me than transformation, which is transcendence. And there was this idea that people put out in the rooms at times when they were talking about their sobriety that said that they transcended the desire to drink. They had a transcendence and a spiritual transformation, all this kind of stuff. And I realized that it's like when I prioritized sobriety, which really, when I talk about prioritizing sobriety, I'm talking about prioritizing my wellness, my, through the 12 steps, which 12 steps are more than just, in the form of like recovering from alcohol. It's also a form of just living life more meaningfully and how to transcend all of this stuff, all of the people pleasing, all of the toxic side of relationships, all of that kind of stuff. And I don't think it was an immediate fix by any stretch for us in our relationship. That took time too, you know, but, and even over time, it was just like, you know, it meant, rebuilding a lot of that stuff. But I think in that first year, it just made me realize that I can be more capable of loving myself and loving others and being somebody new. So after a year of sobriety, that's when I started to, you know, look at the other things that I could do to find better fulfillment. And it even, I mean, I think sobriety in of itself helped me to show up differently and better in the relationship, in my job, you know, with my kids, all that.
So what did you tell me? What did you say to me
What did I say?
with your first year you got sober?
What did I say? I don't know. What did I say?
What did you say you wanted to do when you got sober
when I got
after
sober.
a year?
Well, this was your fault.
How is this my fault?
Well, because what I said, and this is what happens to me so often nowadays, is I said, you know what would be interesting? You know, I've always thought about doing an Ironman triathlon. And mind you, I'd never swam the distance of a pool. I mean, I surfed growing up, yes, but I was never like put my face in the water and swim to a buoy or something like that. I had never ridden a road bike in my life, but I'm like, I just like I've been inspired by doing an Ironman. I just want to do something like that. And in fact, I kind of want to do the Ironman World Championship, but you need to qualify. And what did you say to me when I told you that?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Why? Because like, if you have something calling in your heart,
Yeah.
you need to do it.
Yeah.
Why would you have that? Like people who push that down and say it just what becomes of them? They become resentful
Right.
and angry.
Right.
And if you can do something that you want to do, why aren't you going to do it?
Yeah.
Let's oh, this is going to be an adventure. It's better than being at home and not just keep working in the same way that we've been going.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know, and that's what I love about you is, you know, that you are so encouraging if something is calling to my heart, because there's I think a lot of spouses out there, men and women, might see that. And I've talked to so many people, I've coached so many triathletes, that when they get into it, the conversation that they have with their spouse is, I'd really like to do this thing. And then there's a negotiation that has to happen. Well, how much time are you going to spend with me? How much time are you going to spend with the family and all this kind of stuff? And it becomes that like, oh, you know, it's a sacrifice to have to do that. And so it becomes like a negative thing on the relationship to be doing that, because they're treating it like it's a zero-sum game. But the way that you looked at it, which was so beautiful, was like, no, go for it. Because what you saw in that, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I believe you saw in that was this idea that, hey, if he becomes better for himself within this world of triathlon, he will show up better for our family. He'll be a better example, better father, better. And I don't know, is that true?
Yeah, that was one of my thoughts that was going through my head. Plus,
Yeah.
A year of you being sober and focusing on yourself had already shaped my perspective of how I show up in the relationship too.
Right.
That I started going into Al-Anon, and that I started quickly realizing everybody thinks that Al-Anon shit talks the alcoholics, but we do not. It shapes our perspective of what we can be and who we can be in this world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not focuses on you being everything to me.
Right. Right.
That we need to have outside pleasure, outside fun
Yeah.
to do. So
Right.
what took us, like, when we have time together, we made it quality time. I remember we would go to the beach.
Yeah.
We would plan everything. I mean, here was the way that we had family time was after church. You would get dressed out in the parking lot, put on your clothes, and go for a run. And your run was what, an hour and a half sometimes.
Right.
I would go home, pack lunch, and like your like shakes and food, and we'd pack all that stuff up
Yeah.
and get on our bathing suits, and we'd go to the beach, and you would meet us at the beach.
Yeah.
So, and then we would spend the day, like that.
Right.
We just shifted perspective of how we can make quality time, not quantity time,
Right.
because I wanted quality time. So
Yes.
you got fed. I got to spend time with the kids, and then we got to spend time at the beach. So it was, and you got your workout in. It was like, how do you fit this thing in?
Yeah.
So,
And this is, I mean, I think these were lessons learned over time through going from the phase of like, hey, we have to conform with society, which we've since learned is not a very happy society, right? You don't have a lot of like thriving marriages that are conforming to what society expects, or do we?
No.
We don't. We don't have a lot of thriving careers conforming to what society expects. No, we don't. Do you know who does thrive? The people who question that kind of thing. The relationships where you challenge each other, where iron sharpens iron, where you grow together in such a way that you actually encourage your spouse to go do the things that they want to do, and see how much it improves them for the benefit of the family. This is not a zero-sum game.
because you showed up better.
Yeah, I did. And that's
bitter.
Huh? And bitter?
Fit. I
Oh,
said
bitter.
fitter.
I said bitter. Like,
No,
I wasn't bitter.
fitter.
Maybe after like a really long ride. But no. But yeah, and yeah, so I mean, so yeah, I mean like healthier, fitter, all that stuff. We were able to show up for each other. So this was like our second or third marriage where it was like building into that. And so eventually I did achieve that dream of qualifying for the Ironman World Championship 4 years into it, fully sober, and now like, crossing a dream finish line, and still like in a great place and still growing. And meanwhile, in the career side of it, things were, kind of falling apart.
Oh, I was just about to ask you if
Yeah.
it was like happily ever after you got
No.
your Ironman World Championships.
No, because in the midst of that, the very moments, like with it, a few months before crossing the Ironman World Championship finish line and achieving a dream that I had, I was essentially ousted from my family business. Was pushed out by poor succession planning and how things were navigated there. And so I was basically unemployed for about a year, trying to navigate a triathlon coaching, career and all of that kind of stuff. And so I think that the point is that life is still happening around us, but you mentioned the word perspective earlier. And I think the perspective changed. And so a couple months after doing the Ironman World Championship and trying to build this triathlon coaching platform, I was requested to come back to Hill Brothers this time to lead it as CEO, because the way that, again, I mentioned kind of the succession didn't go well the previous time, and it caused me to feel like I was being forced to leave. And but a few months later, or about a year after that, I was called back to run it just because there wasn't alignment. They were really challenged, and I came back in to essentially kind of a chaotic situation in the business, and that became our next phase, because I took over a company that I really felt had betrayed me in some ways. In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I kind of came into it feeling very insecure about my place there, insecure with family and all of that. And I recognized that when you become the CEO of a family business and you kind of reach that, there's a moment of excitement, that yeah, I've gotten to the top here. Feels like, things are going to come true. And then you see the chaos that's happening around you. You see the relationships that you thought were meaningful, but they've become transactional. And that felt incredibly lonely. And I think it started a path for us where we went through a very difficult time together. That was another challenge. So this was around 2018 through there, but fortunately, a couple of years into that, even and those 2 years, I was just kind of holding on by the seat of my pants, trying to keep this thing afloat and putting out fires, sitting in many different seats, trying to keep control and not getting a lot of support, not being able to put the right team in place. And but I fortunately found a group of men called GoBundance.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the next community that I found. It was sobriety, it was triathlon, and then it was GoBundance, these communities that helped me to transform. And this group of men, entrepreneurs that are just looking out to be the best versions of themselves, men that are raising families, that are building businesses, that are contributing to society in meaningful ways, that are sharpening each other to try to be better versions of themselves in a variety of ways. And it was there that I learned about, how to better build the business. I read the book Traction by Gino Wickman, which got me into EOS, helped us to implement EOS in the business. And within a couple of years of implementing EOS, we scaled our company by about $40 million, became a 9-figure business, and things began to run on all cylinders again. Even though I wasn't able to build the organization the way that I wanted to, I was able to manage this organization, this family legacy business, to an extent that I could help it to become profitable again and scale it. And I think through those years, for me, that's where I began to shape more courage and confidence as a leader and build the persona of letting go of the people pleasing, being able to have the authentic conversations. And I think I brought that to other leadership team rooms because I realized that part of the reason that I was so conflict avoidant throughout my life was because I didn't have a safe place to navigate conflict. I didn't have one. We never did.
It's funny, it's because you built that pretty much from your childhood. It was all about safety, but
Yep.
you couldn't have safe conflict. You didn't have these healthy boundaries, and then you
Because
realize
it was artificially safe.
artificially safe. We'll
Yeah.
go say more about that.
So it
What is
had the veneer of safety. Imagine you're in a vault in a bank that's burning down,
Yeah.
but you're in the vault. You can't see the flames. You can't feel it. You're just in this kind of safety of this vault. But the second you want to open that door, the flames will consume you. That's what I mean by kind of having this artificial safety in some ways, because it's just like there's no way to healthfully go into conflict. What I realized what safety is now, what safety really is, and this is one of the pillars that we want to talk about, and there's a reason it's number one in our Spark framework, is because building that safe place, that psychologically safe place, doesn't mean that you're not going to be triggered. Doesn't mean that it's not going to be scary. Doesn't mean that you're not going into a dark forest. But what it does mean is that you can navigate that as effectively as you can, that you can have healthy conversations in there. Conflict is not bad. And I think that's what I grew up learning to believe, was that all conflict is bad, and safety meant no conflict at all. But what that is called artificial harmony. It's not real.
Yeah.
What real safety is the ability to go into conflict and grow through it and sharpen each other, just like working out at a gym. Building that psychological safety is a place where healthy conflict can happen. We don't have a lot of that in our society right now. We don't. We
don't
have
have
mean-spirited conflict or artificial harmony.
Yeah,
And
and
we
then
need to be able to tap into putting those issues in front of us, not between us.
yeah, and not much community,
Right.
real community.
Right. Exactly.
So did the GoBundance help you peel back that those blinders of seeing your safety in a different way.
Yes.
And
1,000,000%.
so did it help you? I don't know. What are like the words to see like conflict going in, like making conflict a lot easier, and that conflict is a good thing. Like
Yeah.
showing up like that.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that it's easier by any stretch. It's still hard, but that's part of the reason it's good is because like when I first got into GoBundance, I got into rooms where I heard somebody like in a group setting in like a call where somebody said something and then another person just said, "I'm going to call you out on that because I don't believe that that's true. I don't believe that you are doing your best work here." And I was like, "Oh, my stars, that's terrible." And like, I started to hyperventilate. But then, what I heard the person say was, "Thank you for acknowledging that. I'd love to hear more about what you mean by that." I was like, why is he not going crazy? Because I was kind of surrounded in my workplace by people that if you called them out on something, on not doing a job effectively or not doing something, then they would clutch pearls and just get angry and not handle it in a healthy way. And so what we did in order to offset that was leaned into artificial harmony. "Gee, you're doing a good job, Joe. You're doing so great, and gosh bless you because you're doing so." And it's just like, no, that's not the way to handle it. And so over time, I learned that going into the dark forest and actually calling people out in the effort to try and make them better in a way where that it's welcome, where you're being invited into that. That's healthy. And that's why even into our relationships, that's why we're preaching that from the standpoint of psychological and emotional safety. And this is why a lot of this stuff in business and relationships overlap, because those same unhealthy dynamics that are making your workplace shitty are making your relationships shitty. And it's all rooted in shitty communication and an unwillingness to navigate conflict in a healthy way.
Yeah.
That's what it's rooted in.
Yeah.
And so the idea of, it's the foundational basis of you allowing me the freedom to become a triathlete and getting into this business and finding traction and finally being able to kind of build a business around this and having the courage to have those difficult conversations and learning what actual safety looks like. I have to say, safety is not avoidance. Safety is having the courage to go into the dark forest and find the common ground and the solution.
Yeah. You know what I think is funny with the whole thing about safety?
Yeah.
And it bleeds into having boundaries.
Yeah.
And going through all these difficult things like sobriety and everything that comes along with that. By getting sober, people assume that life gets exponentially easier and better, and it's happily ever after.
Right.
Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
But that's not what happens.
No, absolutely not.
And
we've gone through some of our most difficult challenges sober.
And our relationships are just going to magically get better. Like putting up healthy boundaries with your family members, your friends, is going to make them automatically, like you would believe coming from that. And I want to preach this because I thought this was going to be true. It's like having healthy boundaries with my family members was going to automatically make them go, "Oh, that's great. I'm very proud of you." Nope.
No,
that was the
not.
complete opposite of what happens. And you're like, but my therapist said this, and you look at it as my therapist is wrong, or wow, I really need to find relationships and communities where I can have these healthy boundaries, which led you to GoBundance, where thank goodness that you got into these rooms and you saw healthy relationships.
Yeah.
Because I even last week, and I was doing some schoolwork, and I was talking to a classmate, and they were telling me, "Hey, I said, can I get some feedback from you? And I said, can you provide me with some feedback? And I said, she's like, well, you forgot this at this part. And I was like, you know what? I did. And and thank you for that.
Right.
Thank you for bringing that up. And I truly meant it. And I was like,
Right.
pat myself on the back because how far I've come. I was one of those people. You said something to me and I automatically thought it was the end of the world.
Right. Right.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
because my ego got in the way.
Absolutely. And this isn't like, I mean, there's an element of that psychological safety too, where it's like, like I kind of said earlier, it has to be welcomed. Like, because like you can walk into a room, like, and like, or if I walk into a room and I'm just maybe, I don't know, unsolicited advice isn't always the best, like, isn't always the most welcome, like, form of like being critical. Like, there's a fine line there, but navigating that. And I think that's why for us, when we started doing our weekly meetings, that became a real game changer for us.
Yeah.
Because the inherent agreement in that is that this place is going to be the psychological safe place to start having those conversations. And the great thing about it is that even though we get so much resistance from people on wanting to have, we don't want to make our relationship like a business. We don't want to have a meeting. Meeting sounds so cold. Okay, well, call it whatever you want. Call it a connection. Call it a husband and wife fuckfest. Who knows? Who cares what you call it? I don't care. Do it, because the thing is that giving yourself that practice and that place to have that safe conversation where you can healthily navigate conflict is going to give you better tools to do that in every other part of your life.
Yes, definitely.
Every other day. Because the more you do it, the more you break free of that absolute terror. That terror existed in me for years to actually go into it. It's the same terror that exists. Like when I was talking earlier in this episode about being 8 years old or a teenager being afraid to talk to girls. What am I afraid of there? I'm afraid of conflict. I'm afraid of confrontation. I'm afraid of rejection. All of those things speak the same language. But the more you practice it, the more you go into that dark forest, the more you realize that the dark forest, as scary as it is also where all of your dreams come true, where all of the answers are, where all of the things that you want are in there. And if you just walk along the periphery pretending like everything's okay, nothing is going to be okay, and the dark forest is going to consume you anyway. So take ownership of it and just go into the dark forest and go in there with some level of psychological safety.
Yeah. So you started GoBundance.
Yeah.
And then where does your journey go from there after you started GoBundance?
Well, from there, went through, obviously kind of talked about how turned the company around, Hill Brothers and everything like that. And, built some great relationships, great friendships, and strengthened our relationship, really. I mean, we talked about, I think in your interview episode, how our daughter went through very, severe health challenges over the last few years, and that kind of consumed us.
Yes.
And the idea that relationships either grow together or grow apart was really relevant there. Because I think ours, while it had very challenging points, our relationship during those years, I think we also were able to find our voice, applying some of the tools that we had that worked in navigating those relationships, those family and employee relationships at Hill Brothers, taking those into our relationship and working with them here has made everything better. And I think I've been able to, in the last few years, be able to unpack some of the shame that I've had a little bit more. As I unpacked a lot of it when I got sober, and I've been going to therapy for 15 years. I mean, who would have known graduating in psychology, it would be such an important part of our lives? You graduating and me graduating with psychology degrees, that it would kind of like be such important parts of our lives. Yeah. But it really is. And I think now I'm continued to start unpacking shame in the last few years around sex, and specifically kind of what I conceived or perceived as shame around that, how shameful it is to masturbate, or how shameful it is to to desire something or anything like that. And I think we've been able to have more healthy conversations around that, like in the last few years, that have really leveled up our marriage to the extent that, we're having more sex than we ever have.
Yeah.
Had. We're able to talk openly about it with our kids. Not the sex we have with each other, but like sex in general.
In
right?
general, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I have the most awesome conversations in the car
Yeah.
about those things too.
Right.
So.
But I mean, but that's another, speaking of the ideas of how we conform to society. The idea that we can be unique in our own way, in our relationship, and how we enjoy each other. And I think that there's more to come on that as far as, obviously sex and all of that in this show, and we'll talk about that. But for me, it's been able to really find my voice and my sexuality over the last few years, just as I know you have as well.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So now looking back on your life and on from today, how has everything has shaped your idea, and would you feel like relationship and love means to you at this point in time?
I think so what does relationships and love mean to me?
Yeah.
I would say what they mean to me now is I do go back to kind of the Apostle Paul with regard to love is kind. It's not nice. Love is not nice.
What's nice mean?
Nice means that you're being superficially like, oh, I like your hair. Oh, you're so pretty. Oh, it's like, kind.
Just surface level.
Yeah, it's surface level. I mean, it's like, it's easy to be nice because everybody wins. So great. Yeah, be nice. There's nothing wrong with it, but if you're being artificially nice, don't do that. But kindness is digging deeper. How are you? Where, like if depending on the level of the relationship, what's really going on there? If you're in that psychologically safe place, what can I do better to make you feel better this week? What, or even to the extent that if that psychological safety is really there, hey, this is what I need to receive in order for me to feel like this relationship is working.
Yeah.
Because that's the kindness to be honest and open. And I look at openness and honesty as two very important tools and two very important parts of the doorway to love and connection. Openness is how open you are to receive the feedback or the anything in the spirit in which it's intended, that if something's coming with love, if there's just a love intent, meaning and we all just kind of, it's a hard word to describe, but we all know that feeling of love. If we're giving something with love, assume good intent and then receive it and that feedback, allowing it to hit your triggers or whatever those are, however they do, but don't react with your triggers. Allow yourself to feel the feelings, but also be open to receiving what's being said without shame. That's openness. Honesty is what you give. And that's where you give it with kindness, where you give it with the intent of love. And this is something that I tell my clients all the time. It's very important to do that. And it's also very important that you, in that relationship, that you develop first the psychological safety, which takes some time to develop. It's not like you can just go to somebody randomly on the street and say, hey, I want to go deep with you right now. Let's go. No, it doesn't happen like that. There has to be some level of connection there. Again, that's why it gets back to weekly meetings, the routine, the rhythms of connection. Getting into the rhythm of connection allows you to develop that psychologically safe place where you can start to be more kind. That's what I kind of mean by kind. Kindness is a deep word, but it's more authentic, more vulnerable, more honest, more open than just being nice.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice gets you nowhere.
And then what does love mean to me? You.
What does love mean to me? Well, love does mean being kind, but it also just means being willing to grow together, being willing to go into that openness and honesty together, being willing, just forming a deeper and deeper connection. It's growing together instead of growing apart. It's understanding that it's not how you show up when times are easy. It's how you show up together when times are challenging and when times are hard.
Yeah.
It's giving of yourself and also knowing how to receive it, because you can't give love effectively unless you know how to receive it.
That's lovely.
It is lovely.
I like that.
Thank
It
you.
is lovely.
It's lovely.
Is there, as we wrap up,
Yeah.
because I mean, I could talk on forever and ever with you
Yeah.
too, but we probably have a lot of other things to do today. I could hang out with you all day right now.
Right.
And what would you want people to know about you? As you move forward as an entrepreneur, what does how does that shape you in
What
your
do I want
relationship?
them to know about me?
Yeah.
In terms of as I show up as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. And in this space right now.
Yeah. That's a interesting question. I don't know. I haven't thought about that way.
I tripped you up, didn't I?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's,
What would you like to share that somebody might not know about you, that you wish people knew about you?
I guess I want them to, I guess I want them to be more open to understanding that that the traditional course is not always the appropriate one. In fact, most often it's not. And I think the statistics support that.
Yeah.
Whether you're in a family business where 60% of family businesses don't make it to the second generation and 90% don't make it to the third, that maybe that's not a bad statistic. Maybe that's just a statistics we should listen to, that families shouldn't be in business that long. Maybe that's what that statistic is saying. Just a thought. I know family business patriarchs are freaking turning in their CEO seats right now. But then the other statistics are, well, the marriage statistics, the relationship statistics, where 50% of marriages end in divorce, and that's only the people that do something about it.
Yeah.
So that means that the majority of American marriages are unhappy to the point where they might divorce. So why would we continue down a traditional path of how relationships are perceived? Why would we do that if it's not working?
Exactly.
And then maybe, and the other part is, and this isn't really something that I want them to know about me. I just wish that more people would do these things, just to consider those alternative approaches. Be more open-minded to going into conflict in a healthy way, instead of battling it out on social media, instead of sweeping it under the table and pretending everything's okay when something's really not okay. And maybe we could resolve more of our world's problems if we did that. And I guess the last part I wish they knew about me is I tell a dad joke every single day. And the reason I do that is not to be stupid. I mean, it's kind of to be stupid, but it's also to develop a creative muscle and continue to be creative. But it's also to heal the world, because the dad joke is probably the simplest, fastest, and most effective form of disarming people into all being aligned around a common thing, which is groaning at the person who told the dad joke. But in reality, you think about sitting around a dinner table where people are fighting over politics, where grandpa's wearing his MAGA hat and cousin Larry's wearing his Proud Liberal t-shirt or whatever, and they're about to throw drumsticks at each other or whatever, and somebody just says a dad joke. Everybody's on the same page there.
Yeah.
It's just we can disarm each other like through that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just that I think that works. But yeah.
That being said, maybe we should do an episode on conflict, healthy conflict.
Yeah, I think we should.
I think so.
I think we just did. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today on Startup Spouses. And if you like this episode, please subscribe and give us a like. And if you really like this episode and you think somebody else can benefit from it, please share it with a friend. That's how we get the word out. We are committed to helping entrepreneurial couples make their good relationship exceptional. So please get the word out. Share this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.